Hi, this is Krista at the Secret Yarnery. We're working on our granny square tote, and today we're going to be cutting out the lining. So to do the lining of the bag, you're going to need your two squares, which are the same size for your front and back, and your loop of small granny squares. Make sure that they are not twisted. And you want to have your ends sewn in. Oops, what did I leave in here? Yes, I did. You want to have your ends sewn in except for the ones on the very outside, your last row. We can still work those over a little bit. So you want all this ready plus your fabric. You're also going to need either chalk or a pencil, depending on your fabric. If it's dark, it might be hard to see a pencil, and chalk is general. I'm just using school chalk, like regular chalk. You don't need dressmaker's chalk or anything fancy, unless of course you have it. Welcome to use it if you have it. And your fabric. To get your fabric ready, you want to be working on one ply of it and on the back side. So let me see if you can see. But this is the shiny front side and this is the not so shiny back side. So you want to be working on the back so we don't see our pencil marks. And we'll start with our biggest piece, which will be the square. Actually, I'm going to start with this one. Get your pencil or chalk. And this is our handle and the edges of our bag. And this doesn't have to be super exact because we're going to iron it the exact right size. So don't worry about that. But you want about, where's my measuring tape? Excuse my reach. So our squares are a little more than 2 inches wide. So we probably want maybe a 4-inch strip. So we have lots to iron over. We don't want to be doing anything too fiddly. So you could either just cut a 4-inch strip, even 3 inches would be okay, but sometimes it's easier to have more to iron. It depends if you're trying to conserve your fabric or not, but I would generally leave 1 inch on each side of this, and I'm just going to use chalk. So take your chalk or your pencil and just kind of eyeball a little line down there. Something like that. Doesn't have to be perfect. Take your granny squares. I've got to get my scissors. If you do any quilting, you could also use the rotary cutter and the cutting mat, but for filming purposes, I will not. But if it was me and I was doing it on my own, I would totally just fold this all up and vroop with the rotary cutter to make it that wide. So for this, I'm just going to take my scissors and make a snip on the one side. And now fold up my fabric. It's a big piece. I have like meters of it here. I got that folded nicely. And see how much this goes. So I'm going to need more. This lines up on this side like that, but I need more on that side. So I'm going to cut 2 strips of this, which we can do easily. So I have folded it in half this way. So right side, pretty sides are facing out, and the center of it is over here. It'll be easier for you to do if you're not doing it underneath a camera. And now I'm folding it this way. Gee, I have a lot of fabric. Okay. So here's my cut mark over here. So I'm folding it on my cut mark approximately. Does not have to be perfect. Ooh, get that from folding it, good gosh. Okay, and I'm just gonna start cutting on this side over here. You'll see me boogie over in a minute. Doesn't have to be perfect. Like that. So now we have this piece here, which is folded here. So now we're going to cut along that seam and we will have 2 strips for our handle. You will need to cut as many, well, as long as your strip is. This is going to be too long. I'm going to have extra fabric, but that's fine. And is that cut? Yep. So now I have 1 strip that is 2 inches wider than my squares. It's even bigger, isn't it? That's fine. And I have another, so I have 2. So these get put to the side. And we can still keep our fabric folded. Well, we don't have to yet, do we? We need to be on the back side because we're going to be doing our chalk marks again, or pencil marks. Excuse my house coat, it's cold. Freezing. Okay. Get your square. And you're going to remember that crochet stretches. So I'm going to do this about the same way, about 1 inch bigger than my actual square. But remember, I haven't blocked my square because who has time for that? But we're just going to do a little chalk line. Approximately. And at the top here, about 1 inch bigger. If you're conserving fabric, it doesn't have to be 1 inch. I'd say at least ½ an inch. Or else, you don't want to be fighting. You want everything just to be easy. So move your square, and now we're going to fold the fabric again. So we're going to be cutting more than 1 of these at a time. So I have my fabric lined up. It's lined up on the edges. You can see my edges, and down here it's also lined up. And I'm kind of pinching that. You can use pins or clips if you want to keep it in place, but I'm just going to rest my arm on it and start cutting up this one side. And because we're leaving the 1 inch seam allowance on each side, we don't have to be exactly perfect. It'll be forgiving. So like that. And across here. Now I'm making sure I'm not going through other layers of fabric underneath, because this is all, I have a really big piece of fabric folded up there. So there's our 2 pieces. And now I have this bit left over here from the seam side. Get it straightened out. So I'm just going to cut this randomly. Doesn't have to be anywhere close to perfect. We're going to use this piece to make pockets, because we like pockets, don't we? Okay. Now that's all we need for fabric. Our 2 squares. This one we're going to cut in half. You can use whatever size you have of like leftover fabric. In a perfect world, you would have 1 more of these squares or 2 more, and you could just fold it down on one side and you'd have a pocket halfway down inside your bag. You don't want pockets really high up at the top because it'll just kind of collapse your bag when your bag is resting someplace. You want all your things in the pockets towards the bottom of the bag. So this would be perfect, but I ended up, my piece is skinnier. So if I folded it over, I think I'm just going to put pockets on one side of my bag. Or should I do 2? I don't know. Oops, sorry. It is not wide enough, right? Yes. So this is my scrap of fabric I have left over, if I'm not wasting fabric. So I'm going to cut it the same size as one of my squares. So I'll just put a square on top. Let me use that pink line for measuring. Doesn't have to be perfect, approximately. So I'll just cut along here. So now I have 3 squares that are the same size and a little scrap left over. You can also turn this into a pocket if you felt like it, but it requires more sewing. So that is, I'm not doing that. We do it the easiest way we can. So these are squares. One of them, doesn't totally matter, whichever one. Sometimes you can look at the pattern if your pattern's different, but it's going to be the inside of your bag, so no one's really going to see it. Take one of them and fold it in half. That's all you have to do. So now this one is going to go along one side of our bag on the inside, so we're going to have a pocket along the inside. Hope that makes sense. Now we need to get our iron and a scrap piece of cardboard. The best kind, or the kind you're thinking of looking for, is like from a cereal box. We're just pretty much making I guess my dad would call it a jig, but we're just making like a template to make our pressing super easy and mindless, because I'm all about being lazy. So go get your cereal box and your iron. I'll be right back. Now thread your needle if you're doing it by hand. I'll show you both ways, but we'll start with people that don't have a sewing machine. So take a piece of your thread and double it up. Thread your needle and then tie a knot with both strands at the end. Just tie a knot with both strands. There you go. You can snip off a bit of your tail if you feel like it, like that. And now we have our needle threaded and knotted. So 2 pieces of for your strap, or the center of your bag, the middle. It's 2 pieces and we put them together, pretty sides touching. So the back side is facing out and we're just lining them up. See, it's not even the same, like they're not identical. One's way bigger than the other. I'm just putting them in the middle. And we're going to take the We're going to take the needle that we threaded and poke it in close to the end of the narrowest one. And bring it back through. And we're just going to do this once, just one little stitch like that till we see our knot. And before we pull that through, we're just going to put our needle through that loop we have left, and that's going to secure our work. That's a nice little knot we have. And now we're just going to feed our needle back and forth. The smaller the better for your stitches. Like my grandmother would be yelling at me if she saw me making big stitches like this, but it doesn't really matter. So wiggle your needle back and forth from the top to the bottom, making sure you're going through both strands. And this is how you're going to be stitching all the seams if you do not have a sewing machine. When you get to the end, just kind of push it all through and off the needle at the back side. Might have gone too many there. There we are. So just pull that through. And through. Make sure it doesn't get tangled, which that one did. And then if one of your strands is looping up, just find which one it is. Separate your thread and give one a pull. That wasn't it. Give the other a pull and it'll flatten right down. Smooth it out. That's a little running stitch. And now we're going to do a knot. So to do a knot that's going to stay, because remember we got to go into it on this side, so we know that side's going to stay. This side is a bit trickier. Is you hold where you want the area you want your knot to be and loop your needle around twice and pull it up and hold that with your fingernail where you want it to be, and that is a nice double knot. And now you just go around it one more time, so it ends up being a triple knot like that. And again, knot your thread again a little ways away, and then when you cut your thread here, your next thread is ready to go also. It has a knot on it. Now we have two sides of our bag, or the front and the back. These are just going to get pressed flat. We don't want any wrinkles on them or seam marks. So just make sure your iron's on the right temperature. If you're using cotton like me, some steam helps. There we are. That's fine. Just so it's flat. And technically, you should also be doing it from the back of your fabric. Especially if you have any metallic, the metallic could come off on your iron. So give this a little press, just so it's flat, and we'll keep its size. You can still see the seam, but it's not taking up distance. That's all we're going for. Nothing perfect. Now our third one, I'm still gonna press it flat to start. Get rid of any seams we have from it being folded. And now I'm going to line up this bottom edge, and I'm going to make sure that it is lined up completely. Sorry, that was a bit of Swahili. Okay, now press this seam. Just flatten it in half, like that. And then this edge here, we're going to trim with your cute little scissors, so that when we're stitching it, we know where the end is. There. It's not perfect either, but it's perfect enough. We have a seam, and this is right side out. Those ones are finished. Center strap, and where we did our stitching, we want to open that up with your fingers. You want to press that open like that. I'll take your iron and press it. And now you're just going to press this one everywhere the same, just to get the wrinkles out. There we go. Hope it's not steaming up the camera lens. It might be. Oopsies. All right. And starting again this way. Just pressing it flat. Okay. So that was it for pressing it. You can see here it's all jagged. That is from a previous pattern I made. Now I have my cereal box. Cut it open. Just a piece of it we need. And this one we're going to measure and make sure that it is, how wide should we make it? Let me get my ruler. Now to measure, we're just going to start by making a straight line. That's easy. On one side of the ruler and on the other side of the ruler. So that has given us a 1 inch. Now I'm going to line it up. You can leave a tiny space. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just the idea of it is great. And another line on this side. So now you have 2 inches. Take your paper scissors and cut on those lines. This is going to be our template for ironing our shoulder strap. There. So that is a 2-inch strip of cardboard. Let's take our shoulder strap and let's measure it. We'll fold it in half. Give it a bit of a pull, same as you kind of smoothed out your squares. Kind of smooth this out as well. Not really pulling, oops, well, that's fine. Chenille fell apart. But smoothing it out with a tiny bit of a stretch. Okay, that's great, I think. And now we're gonna measure it from one end all the way up to the other end. And I'm not really pulling the tape measure, it's a bit loose because we'd rather have a bigger measurement than a smaller. And it's almost 29 inches, we're gonna say it's 29 inches. So that's our magic number, 29 times 2, right? So doubled up, that's our magic number. Oops, snagged, good. So now we'll take, we can get rid of that one. And you can just check this template. That's pretty good. Yeah, that's about right. Fine. Get rid of your granny squares, take your fabric, because this is too long. Yours might be right, but I'm going to measure mine. So starting on one side and not including this selvage edge or like a half an inch more. So if it was 29 we needed, say 29 and a half. There's my 0 lined up inside past my, we need a bit of seam allowance. And we need for 29 inches. There's 23. And over here is 29. So I'm going to take that spot, fold it in half, and cut at the same spot. So now I'm adding the seam allowance on the other piece. So this, you don't need to add a whole inch, you're just going to add a centimeter or half an inch to each end. And now this one we're going to, we can also just sew this together actually now. You are welcome to use your sewing machine if you'd like. I'll put that away again. And this one is ready to get ironed open. That we want to do. Ooh, my tape measure, that would be bad. Melted tape measure. So press that seam open. You don't have to press your seams, but it really does help with a better finish. So now we have our loop, which is the side of our bag, and the handle. We need to iron it. So just open it up, and you're going to put your template inside in the middle area somewhere, like so, and fold over one side. Get my stuff out of the way, I got everything here. Fold over, fold over. And the second side, fold over. And then we're just going to slide this paper down. So keep ironing this until you have finished the whole round, the whole loop. Like that. And now you have a strip, so that's going to be the width of your bag and the handle. So we can set that aside with our squares and our edging, and that is for assembly, ready to go.